So this is just a quick video to show you how to play the introduction of Wonderful Tonight, arranged by Masaaki Kishibie. I don't know if I'm saying his name right. It's quite a good song for starting out with string bending if you're an acoustic guitar player and you've not done a lot of string bending before, but you still want to play something which is actually arranged for an acoustic guitar and not like try and play an electric guitar solo on an acoustic guitar, which never really sounds the same. It's quite a long video. That's because the string bending technique is actually, I think, one of the hardest techniques to learn on guitar. Try and sit through the whole video, stop it at different points and have a go at the string bend, but do make sure that you watch the whole thing through, because there's quite a lot of good information about your hand position, which is really important to do in a string bend. You don't actually need a lot of strength in your hand. You know, you don't need to be doing hand exercises or anything like that. Certainly I never did. I think that if you follow these different tips about your hand position, your thumb, and how you're actually moving your wrist to do the string bend, you'll be able to move the string quite a lot more than if you'd just been doing this technique a long time. Anyway, here's a quick demonstration of the introduction. Okay, so to play the intro of Wonderful Tonight, there are a couple of different things you need to try and do. The first thing is when you're hitting the first note in each bar, which is, you'd call it the bass note, it's like the lowest note in each chord that you're playing, you need to try and let that ring for the whole bar if possible. Now, that would be easy if you were just playing the thumb on just the bass notes, like that. But unfortunately, you've got a slap after that as well onto a different string. Now, you should really try with this to, when you make the slap happen, try not to touch the string which is ringing already. So when you start off and you play your A string, which is tuned down to a G, but we'll keep calling it the A string, you need to try and do the slap on the next string, which is the D string, and not touch the A string. If you touch it, it'll stop ringing. Now, it's really difficult to miss that string. See, I'm managing to do it now, but it won't happen all the time. Sometimes you'll end up touching it. If you can avoid hitting the bass note, it'll keep ringing for the whole bar, and it'll just give the introduction a much more like a full sound. Now, you also need to play a note after each slap. So in the first bar, you're slapping on the D string and then playing the D string again, like this. Now on the strings where you're slapping and then playing the same string again, just use your thumb for the slap and the note after it. That's because when you've done the slap, your thumb comes to a rest on that string anyway, so it's already there to play it again. So you can do that in just bar 1, the first bar. Now in the rest of the bars, 2, 3 and 4, if you use your index finger to play the next string, which is always the D string, it's a little bit easier on your right hand. You don't have to suddenly play the slap and then quickly move your thumb across to the next string like that. That's quite difficult. If you use your index finger instead, it's a lot easier to switch to the next one. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to play the introduction, and I'm not going to play the string bending. I'm just going to do the bass note, the slap, and then the string after it. Now again, sometimes I'm not going to be able to make the bass note ring and do the slap and miss the bass note. It's going to cut it off. But that's what you should aim for when you're practicing this at home. So here we go. 2, 3, 4. You see, I only got it about half the times there. But if you really do make an effort to keep that bass note clear, it'll give it a much better sound. Now, to do the string bending, if you're an acoustic guitar player and you've never played electric guitar before, or you've never got to like a fairly intermediate level with electric guitar, there's a good chance that you've never done any string bending before. Now, string bending is quite difficult to do on an acoustic guitar because the strings are fixed on the bridge here. The tension is always the same on the strings. You know, if you try and bend a string, it very, very quickly becomes really, really tight and hard to move very far. Now, this is quite a good song for actually starting out doing some string bending on acoustic, because you've got to tune your strings down. They're actually a little bit slacker than usual, and unless you're running some really, really thick, like 13 gauge acoustic strings, it's not too difficult to start off with. That being said, you're going to find it a lot easier on electric guitar. So anyway, to do the string bending, you're doing the same bending leg almost exactly all the way through this introduction. And you should do this by, if you put your first finger to begin with on the, it's the 5th fret with your capo on, but it actually looks like the 7th fret without your capo. We'll refer to it as like you've got the capo on throughout this. So you put your first finger on the 5th fret, your second finger on the 8th, and your third on the 9th fret. You've got 3 fingers on that string now. Now that makes it a lot easier to do this bend. Now, to do any sort of string bend, you need to make sure that you have your thumb on the top of the neck. It's really, really important you do that. That's just so that your hand stays nice and stable when you're doing the bend, and so that any movement you do with your hand actually moves the string and not your hand. If you don't do that, watch me try and do this bend, and watch the neck of the guitar. See, it's going up before I'm having to actually use my arm to try and keep the guitar still. You're sort of wrestling with it. Now, if you put your thumb on top, which is what you should do, that guitar is going to stay still and the string is going to take all that force that you're putting into it. Now, another thing about string bending is you don't do a string bend by moving your fingers. It all comes from your wrist and your forearm a little bit as well. Now, remember about the thumb being on top of the neck. Keep the thumb on top of the neck, and if you look at my hand now, my index finger and actually this part of the hand, like your first sort of couple of knuckles, are wrapped underneath the neck like that. So you look at the back of the hand, the thumb is hooked around, palm is pressing on the back of the neck, you've got your hand in contact with the neck all the way underneath like this. Now, if you watch me, I'm just going to do a string bend, different to what it sounds like in the song. My hand stays touching the neck the whole time, and if you can see my hand here, it actually looks like it's starting out at an angle like that. If you imagine the angle sort of coming down this way, like that, and as I do the bend, it's moving this way. So it's a little bit like your fingers. If you look at your fingers, they're starting out at an angle. When you bend the string, you're twisting your wrist round that way. And if you imagine, if I just put my finger there, imagine my finger is the string, and I do a bending motion, it pushes the finger upwards like that. And that's exactly what happens to your string. All the way through this, my fingers are not actually going straight like this. If you find that you're trying to bend the string, and this is what's happening to your fingers, you're straightening your fingers out, you're not going to get a lot of control. It's not the way to do it. Your fingers need to stay secure, don't stiffen up, okay? Your fingers need to be fairly firmly on the string, so that any movement you put into your wrist goes straight into the string. So your fingers have to be nice and firm, just like your thumb's on top. And the better you get at this hand position, the easier. This type of bend is called a pre-bend. What that means is you've got to bend the string up and then pick it. That's the pre-bend. It's the opposite to a regular bend, which is where you play the string and then bend it up. It's a pre-bend. Bend it, pick it. Now, the way to practice any type of string bending is you need to look on the tab, and the tab says that you're bending this up full. Full means 2 frets. So that 7th fret you're playing there, remember that's the 9th fret without the capo on. it needs to sound 2 frets higher. It needs to sound like this note. So what you need to do is play the 9th fret, go back to the bend it up, pick the string a couple of times and stop when it sounds like the 9th fret which you checked. Like that. And when you can get to the stage where pretty much every time you bend up and you're hitting the right note, see, it was a bit high there, you'll know that you're getting used to the feel of what it feels like to bend up full on that string. Once you can hit that note pretty consistently, pick the string and then release it back down so it's unbent. And that's where the pre-bend and release name comes from. Now, to release the string, the most important part is that you don't relax your fingers, don't actually lift them off the string. If you do that, this is what will happen. See, the note will just stop and it'll just die out before you've released it back down. So you've got to keep a fairly good grip on the neck and on the string. And also make sure that your fingertips stay on the string. If you watch me do this bend, I'll get around this way. It might go a bit dark, but you should be able to see a bit better. So that's the string bent up, releasing it back down. And when I finish off, I've got my fingertips on the string just like normal. You need to sort of rotate your wrist around the neck as you let the string drop back down. Watch again from this side. So I'm fretting the string, fingertips on. Push the string upwards with your fingertips on, play it, and let it drop back down with your fingertips on. You'll start off doing this string bending and it'll feel like you're putting as much effort as possible into the string and it's not actually going very far at all. You'll start out getting this, and if it's not working, it was probably because you've not got your hand anchored underneath the string enough. You've not got your thumb wrapped around, or you're trying to bend with your fingers. Go back to the video, watch all these little different bits, try and get your hand feeling as secure as possible. Once you can bend up 2 frets, that's all you need to do for this introduction.